We're going to jump in here. We've got Rolando Rosas from Global Tech. He is a master seller in the drop shipping and all things Amazon space, especially around headsets. We're both wearing headsets at the moment that Rolando has tested, sold, done reviews on, has fantastic traction. So, Rolando, we're here to talk about Amazon Data Dudes, or ADD. We've got Brandon Checketts and Jordan Checketts, CEO and COO of Seller Labs, and I'm the product manager over at Seller Labs. And today we've invited Rolando here. We're going to talk about Amazon data and how it's currently helping or challenging Global Tech. And Rolando, just before we started recording, he was going to throw out 3 or 4 things that are kind of the nuts and bolts of some of this data that's going on inside Global Tech. So let's jump into that.
All right, thank you, Will. I appreciate that. So I think every Amazon seller that is been on the platform for a while can all say that things kind of there's things that you need to have, things that you wish you could have, and then there are things that are absolutely critical. And sellers that have been on the platform for a while have all cobbled different solutions around some of these 4 areas that I think are critical: listings, ads, inventory, and keywords. And when you have those 4 areas to really look after the business on Amazon, you really need to have not just insights into the data, but actionable intelligence. So what do I do? So what? So what? There's a lot of companies that could give you data, but the thing that I think I mentioned to you before, Will, was that if there's a way to have intelligent notifications of that data, or the data gives me not just insights, but something to do with that information, then as a user of that data, I can assign other people to look after that, right? That may not require as much money as an owner or a co-founder or somebody else of high value that it's a lot of time, a lot of money to tie up somebody on that level to go look at the data, analyze it, and decide an action plan around it. So if there's a way to not just extract the data, but then put the data in a way that it can be actionable and decisions can be made on that in an intelligent way, then we can have somebody much junior look at it and then present whatever we need or whatever we need to extract out of it further up the line into a CEO role or somebody on the C-level side, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it from those 4 perspectives. And I think I've said to you, each one of these has different ways of trying to go dicing at it and looking at it.
Love that. I'm actually curious to hear. So Jordan is as an Amazon seller as well. So I want to hear his perspective. And then I want to ask Brandon to throw out some ideas around what he's seen. And Brandon also did a ton of Amazon selling a couple of years back, still does some Amazon selling today. So I'm curious to hear his aspect because he's the total data genius on the call here in terms of aggregating. He's probably pulled more data from Amazon than anybody I know. So Jordan, what would you say to those 4 items and the idea around actionable insights?
I really like them. I haven't ever thought about at that, kind of that high level of if I had to break this into 3 or 4 areas. I agree with those 4 areas post product. For me, I still say product is king. Like all of those 4 things you just mentioned are so much easier if you have a good product at a fair market price. So I would say, assuming you have the product, then yes, 100%. I like those 4 areas. I'm totally with you though. I can't even count the number of softwares that I used over the last decade where it's like, here's data. Oh, we've got all this data. You just manipulate the data. And it's so overwhelming, especially like I could dive in there. But to your point, it's just like my hourly rate's so much more expensive that it's really difficult for me to have to do it. But the data is just so cumbersome that my $60,000 a year Amazon employee or something, a lot of times they can't wrap their brain around how to actually use that data. So on the deliverables side, I completely agree. And we've actually talked a lot about this at Seller Labs of like, hey, we don't just want data. We want, here's the data and here's what we suggest you do with the data so that you can see what the actionable item should be. And you can look at the data to verify to yourself if our software made the right decision, right? So there's a validation there as well. But so yeah, I really liked your 4 areas though. And I completely agree with them. Inventory and inventory management has been a big one for us. It's like, okay, it's like ordering inventory is one thing, but especially over the last couple of years with all of the supply issues that we've had and the shipping delays that we've had, it's like inventory has been a difficult challenge because our lead times, which used to be 6 weeks, are now 6 months, right? For some of our products, like it's just insane. And so to be able to adapt to that. So inventory has been a big one. And as we'll talk a little bit more about data warehouse, but one of the things I'm most excited about is an inventory forecasting application that we can use this data where it actually is predicting inventory on a very accurate level, and it's adjustable. So it's adapting to changing lead times and all that type of stuff. So, but I really liked your 4 areas. I think those are awesome.
A lot of sellers spend a lot of time and park a lot of time in the, which products to sell, right? And trying to find sourcing and, which one are going to be the winners. I just recently saw a set of bunch of videos on social media that really drove me just straight batty. And they were just basically, I'm going to show you how to be successful on Amazon. Go to Alibaba. Then if you see a product you like and you're interested, it sells on Amazon for $30. Alibaba has it for $1. Go on Amazon and sell it. Now you can make a fortune. Now I'm oversimplifying it, but I've seen a lot of videos of that, and people that call themselves experts or FBA consultants do this kind of thing. And it's just maddening because you can't be successful by taking that advice seriously.
It's too easy, right?
Like 10 years ago, you could have.
And your margins are gone.
Yes. Imagine if I gave you a basketball and I say, basketball, here it is, Brandon, be Michael Jordan, because I gave you the basketball. That's not going to happen. You got to work. Even Jordan was cut out of his high school team because he wasn't good enough initially. You can't just say, I'm going to show you where to get product, and now you just list yourself against the top competitors on Amazon against that, and all of a sudden you're going to make as much money as the top competitors on Amazon for that exact product. It doesn't work that way.
No, there's some data. There's some data behind all of that you need to go in and find those actionable insights and bring that around. So to bring it back around, listings, ads, inventory, keywords, not just extracting data, but actionable insights. Brandon, what do you have to say to that?
So I have a couple of things that I would mention. I'm curious if you didn't include financial data in that, and that maybe that's kind of included in some of that. But I would tend to ask. I would ask if financial data should be included in there as well.
Well, yes, from an ROI perspective, and we're looking at things from an ROI side of things and where the money should be spent and that kind of thing. Obviously, and that's, to me, all 4 of them work together because all of this gets at cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. I want to understand where to deploy cash.
Yeah. So I would say sort of how Jordan said, assuming you have a good product, I would say, assuming your financials work out, or those 4 things I would say are kind of focused around the operational and the performance of your business. I guess there's things about sourcing the product we're not talking about. There's things about tracking your finances that doesn't address. But as far as like the day-to-day operations of the business, making it go, I think that would be a good 4.
Well, I actually don't think that financials isn't a bad one to add. So there's 5 categories.
I would say all of them are held up by financing, right? You need, or cash, or whatever you'd like to call it, Brandon, because without cash, you can't make any of this happen. And without cash continuing to come through the operation, it certainly falls apart real quick.
Yeah, and I would say maybe it's the larger you get, or maybe the more complicated you get, the more important the financials are to understand, right? Because
absolutely,
it's easy to be fooled by the numbers if you don't understand the actual finances behind it. I know one of the things that we've talked about with Jordan, and I think with Tyler over at Seller Accountant, is the return on working capital concept, right? If you've got a business that makes you $1 million a year in profit, you can't actually say that's good or bad. until you understand how much working capital it takes to make that $1 million. If it takes $100 million in working capital to make that $1 million, is not nearly as good as if it takes $1 million to make $1 million. So
Absolutely, I agree. Agreed. I know for me, one of the things that there's so many, like if you take ads for example, I am hyper focused right now on the ROAS, return on ad spend. Anything that is low, I don't want to put money in it. If it's, you know, a 5, 7, 10, 12, even 20, how can we make that spend that we got $20 on $1 being spent? How can we then add more fuel to that? Is it possible to keep getting 20 for every dollar that we just spent?
Yeah.
Rather than just growth. You know, everybody's in different phases. I like making money. I don't like being close to the edge where, you know, we're growing, but the margins are thin. That means I got to sell a truckload of it. And that's a hard thing. You know, I got to deal with more storage and more this and more that, but more manpower.
Yeah.
Let me just make as much profit as possible so that then I could redeploy that cash, maybe buy more inventory, maybe have money to hire more people or try some new things.
Yeah, when I talk about finances, that's one of the key things, right? Is like everybody's always focused on the top line. How much money am I making? And it's really hard, especially in an inventory-based business, to really understand how much profit you're making because you've got so much tied up in inventory. So it's really easy to think that you're doing well because your revenue is going up and up and up. But at the same time, you're like making less profit because, you know, over time, margins are getting squeezed. You're spending more on advertising. Your freight's costing more, all inbound freight, all that stuff goes up. So it's not enough to just say your revenue is going up from year to year. You got to look at the bottom line. So
100%.
Yeah, I've been saying this for years. I swear probably half the Amazon sellers out there are losing money and they don't even know it. Because they're not good at accounting for all.
Or said another way, half of the products that the seller is selling may be losing money. They might be having some that are profitable, but part of their catalog is not profitable.
Well,
they're not looking at unit economics, they're looking at the whole picture. And a lot of times those non-profitable SKUs are hidden because the other profitable ones are making up for that. And so they think, hey, as a whole, I'm being successful, and they don't dive into the unit economics.
No, and it becomes more exaggerated the more SKUs you have. It's easy to, you know, probably manage, you know, handful of SKUs, right? 4 or 5 SKUs. You can see the direct line, oh yeah, I spent here and this is where the cost and all that stuff is going. But I think you get 100, 1,000, 2,000 SKUs or above that. And then how do you manage that at scale? And that's something for us that in the last 9 to 12 months since COVID, how do we better manage that? So that
talk
our
about
entire Go ahead.
I was gonna say, talk about your data at that level. It's sort of like the per product level. Like how do you feel like your data, do you have good data at that level, or is it starting to get too? Okay.
Yes, and so I'll put a plug in here for Will, who's helped us automate and integrate a lot of those tools in place, because, you know, we did some analysis a while back ago, and we probably need this, you know, quadruple our staff to manage the type of order volume that we have and the SKU level count that we have if we would not have implemented some of the integrations and automations in place. So in order to manage that data, we really dive into on a per SKU level, you know, what's working, what's not, what's profitable, what's barely profitable, what's really popping off for us in terms of volume and profit, so that we can better balance it comes down for us really, you know, we don't have a treasure full of, you know, money we could just keep going to, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars like a big, large enterprise. So where can we best utilize the resources we have, and which SKUs are popping?